Mr. Danielson will be filming us today. So thank you for being here, Bruce.
Okay, we're here today. We're going to have another interview here with today, House candidate for District 6, Clara Hart. She is running for the state legislature. And if you could just give me a short bio about yourself. I know there's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. I already know you're a refugee and your whole story, but if you'd like to just kind of fill people in quickly.
I was born in Mozambique. At the age of 8. My parents and I fled to a war and lived in one refugee camp in Tanzania, and fled from that camp and went and lived as refugees in Kenya for about 20 years. And in 1987, my ex-husband and I applied for resettlement to come to U.S. So I arrived in the U.S. in 1988, lived in San Diego for 1 year, and moved to South Dakota in 1989. So this has been my home for almost 28 years. Lived in Minnehaha County for 11 years, and Lincoln County for 16 years.
Okay. And have you ran for other offices before? Have you run for the state legislature before?
In 2008, I ran for state senate, and I ran against Senator Jean Abdallah. I didn't make it.
I'm not a fan of Jean.
Against him. And then in 2010, I was asked by a lot of friends to run for the city council at large, and that happened to have lots of interesting people or interested people for that seat. One of them was my former neighbor, Rex Rolfing. He lived down the street. So there were 2 people in the same neighborhood that were running for office. So he won. I came in strong second. Yes. And
speaking of state legislature, is there? I'm sure you have lots of objectives, but is there one thing that is really important just to you that when you go there that you really want to push that you haven't seen pushed yet at this point?
I would like to have some sort of collaboration between these 2 groups, because there's only one party system, and that has to change. It happens that the minority, whenever they try to introduce a bill or some kind of concern, the majority sort of don't listen to them. They a clique, and this other group, the minority, are left. All their bills are not, which are supposed to be very people-friendly. They don't make it, and that has to change. That's why I'm very, very upset with the one-party system that we have right now, because there's lack of transparency, because the majority tend to cover everything under the rag and protect their own. And that is not fair in a democratic society like that. That's one of the things that really upset me. And the other thing is education. When teachers were being treated like unprofessionals last year, when they were supposed to have the hearing for teacher pay raise, they changed the date and decided to have a hearing on a different day. And there were so many people who had traveled far and wide. And having worked in that profession for so many years, my dad was a teacher, was a principal, and for me also working in the school system for many years, I value the teachers, I valued the profession of teaching, and I didn't think that was a right thing to treat people who have your children for 6 hours a day, and you treat them like they don't matter.
I've noticed that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party in South Dakota too, so I shouldn't say just the Republicans, but I've noticed that the Republican Party is very cliquey, and they have their certain groups, and it's not just that they're probably looking down I'm just going to go quick here, but
Yeah.
it's probably not they're not just looking down on teachers as a profession. They look down on a lot of people as a profession. And that was one of my questions, the one-party rule, and you kind of answered it, how it's kind of hurting our state and it needs to be more cooperation. That's why I've told people I think Amendment V is very important, and I hope it passes. So it makes voters force themselves to actually go out and find out what kind of person is Clara Hart,
Yes.
what kind of person is Mark Mickelson, instead of just looking at what your party designation is. They have to actually go out and research you and then try to figure out who you are. Because I think a lot of times when people vote a straight ticket, there might be some things about a certain Republican in that or Democrat that they don't like, but they're just doing the ticket thing. On to you were talking a little bit about peer. I was thinking the other day, I think a great thing to try one year is there's 4 weeks in the session, right?
Yes.
I've said that they should do the first week of session in Pierre, the second week of session in Rapid City, the third week in Sioux Falls, and then the fourth week back in Pierre. Because your first week you're trying to get all your stuff together, and that last week you're finalizing things. So I think it would be neat because people wouldn't have to travel as far and move around, you know. But back to the teacher thing, you were talking a little bit about the teacher pay thing. I was against raising the retail tax because I felt that, well, for one, it was a Republican plan. And the other reason I was against it is because there's a lot of money in the education trust fund. There's things they could have done with property taxes. There's lots of other things they could have done. But I wasn't so much opposed to the Democratic plan, which was to raise it a full penny and then take the tax off of food. What did you think of the plan? Did you like the idea of raising taxes a half a penny for teacher pay, or would you have liked to seen something totally different?
Well, what I had in mind is only that a half a penny raise.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking to my fellow teachers, they seem to go along with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
that was good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was in favor of that,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have voted for that had I been in
Right.
here.
But I guess my question is, do you understand what I'm saying, that there's probably other options out there? And, you know, we've seen already that some schools aren't getting what they thought they were going to get, and because of their size.
Mm-hmm.
And there's almost this pressure, the force to consolidate. And the other complaint I've heard, especially people who work for the district here in Sioux Falls, is now the teachers all got a raise, but a lot of the other people got a raise too, but nothing compared to what the teachers got. And a lot of the resource staff and stuff basically said, wait a minute here, you know, we all deserve to get a good raise, and that didn't happen. And that's why I asked about the trust fund and their other sources. Because we know eventually, because they've already said this, that this half a penny increase, this is a short fix, this isn't gonna, you know, in a couple of years, it's not gonna hold together. They're gonna have to find more funding somewhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just have when I was listening to the debates on the floor, I didn't have a lot to work with except
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think using the trust fund, I think would be a bad idea long term.
Long term.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I understand that small schools that are looking at consolidating or closing the schools. For example, Worthing does not have a middle school.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are bused to Lennox.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the District 6. So the small schools are hurting.
Yeah.
This teacher pay raise is not really a one size fits all.
Right.
There's some schools that are hurting, the staff are not joyful celebrating, just like big schools like Sioux Falls.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I took from it was, it almost always seems like, in what you started with talking about, the one-party rule, it almost seems like the Republicans in the state, they always would just want to put a Band-Aid on something, and they never want to actually seriously look at an issue and say, let's fix it permanently.
Yeah.
Because it's just a Band-Aid.
Yes, that's
So
what
that's,
it is.
I'm sure that's something
It's
you'll be looking at as a teacher.
Majority rule.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Because if you don't go with the majority rule, I was at an event last week, both sides was invited.
Yeah.
And one gentleman started saying, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I ask you to vote R and no on everything else. One, from the majority
Vote yes on
party.
R, yeah.
Yeah, and so others, because I think they view this gentleman as having some clout, they all ended up singing like a choir. Oh yes, I also agree. Vote yes on R and no on everything else. And that's even on Facebook. Now it has become like a sing-along.
One of the questions I asked the other candidates is, do you support the initiative and referendum process? There's a lot of legislators who don't. They don't like it. They feel like we elect them, they should be the ones making the laws, and the citizens are fiddling with what we're doing.
Yeah.
What do you believe? What do you think of the initiative referendum process?
It's good because it keeps people who are in a status quo capacity to think outside the box. For example, Amendment T. Where in the world should legislatures choose their voters?
Right.
It should be the other way around.
Exactly.
This is a process that is not democratic.
Right.
I support Amendment T, and I think it's going to work for us, and it's going to just help a lot of this confusion that every 10 years that you're creating borders, and even the people that live there, when it happens, they don't even know where they're supposed to vote. They're mad. They're upset. When I'm on the road, I have not heard very good things about this gerrymandering.
Yeah, you spring that up. I live in 13. I have for a long time, and they did the same thing there. It used to be it would be split.
Yeah.
Democrats and Republicans, and after they changed it, it went all Republican. And they claim that they don't do this, but we know that they do. And my other question I have is, do you think the Attorney General and the Secretary of State's office should be nonpartisan office holders?
It should.
Yeah.
Because I see what happens. I know our
Especially Secretary of State.
Secretary of State should be a non-partisan.
Yeah.
Attorney General, I can see why they should be their governor appointed or president appointed, but Secretary of State should be non-partisan by all means, because I can see biases. You have to be loyal to your party, and you can't be totally neutral if you're partisan, and it should be changed and be more like a city council. When you're running for city council, no one knows what your party affiliation is.
Yeah, the one thing that worries me about our current Secretary of State is she has told several people that she doesn't like the initiative and referendums. And that really worries me because she's running our elections.
Yes.
And that sometimes bothers me. So I wondered what you thought of that. Is there any, and I'll ask you one more question here and then you can kind of fill in what you want to talk about, but is there any laws that you've seen over the last few years passed that you thought were really bad and or just not good for people that you would like to see referred, revoked, changed, anything?
Well, they almost passed. I would say the last session, like the bathroom bill. That one, if it had passed, that would have been the worst law.
It's going to come
ever.
up again this year, too.
I hear that there is a threat that is going to come up be brought up by some people who are so religiously attend those ALEC meetings, and I hope it doesn't. Well, I hope it doesn't pass, and I hope the governor uses his wisdom to do what he did this year.
You said ALEC is
ALEC.
pushing. They're pushing that.
I would, I'm thinking more, I don't have the fact, but
Surprises me.
that is.
I mean, I don't like ALEC, and I don't like anything that they do, and we know they write a lot of laws for our legislators.
Yes.
But well, I
They-
don't know why they would be, because I've always thought of ALEC as, they're not a good organization, but I've always thought of them as more capitalist, no regulation kind of organization that tries to push deregulating so businesses can do whatever they want to. So I would think that they would try to stay out of that. I don't know, stay out of that. They don't want to get into that fight. But you never know with them, because they do all kinds of crazy stuff.
They're part of it. They're involved, and like you said, they're in the business of having less regulations or have free market kind of system. But they have now extended their arms or fingers into others because they're on morality issues. Because I listened to somebody saying that Sioux Falls is #1 city, a good city to live in, but when it comes to moral issues, very, very intrusive.
Right. And just over the past couple of weeks, the deaf community has complained about closed captioning with city meetings, and the blind have had a rally about trying to inform the public about the white cane and paying attention to that, because it's the law. And you're right, when it comes to diversity and the morality of diversity, not just the transgender, but there's a lot of different groups, and of course Charles Santee filed a complaint with the Federal Highway with 41st Street and the issues with the ADA and stuff. But it's a statewide issue too. You know? But you talk about it. I mean, you're an immigrant. I mean, you came from a different country. What do you think Sioux Falls and South Dakota, and what do you think you can do in the legislature to encourage more laws so that Sioux Falls is kind of maybe more forced to start accepting this diversity and helping people? Because right now they kind of have little loopholes and they can get out of things. But if it was in the state constitution or a law, they might not be able to worm out of things as easily.
It is in the Constitution that they should allow refugees to come to this country, but several states have created their own laws. I think with the hope that people are not going to go that deep and study those laws.
Right.
And the governors have no say in where refugees are resettled. But I'm surprised, our state here, all our congressional representatives, and I think several other people, people of faith have been very supportive, and they've been very upset when they heard what happened in Aberdeen. The closure of the refugee center in Huron, and also that there will be few numbers of refugees resettled here. That is something that surprised me. Why? South Dakota, that I know, I've lived here 28 years. I know this city or this state as a welcoming state, loving, giving, so generous, and to say somehow that, we can't increase the number of refugees because we may expose them to hostile environment. Which is the hostile environment? Is this the same supports that I know? So there's some things that are brewing up there. I'm trying to find out why. But I know this state is welcoming. It's just a few people who are trying to scare them. The fear factor has become the norm now. But I know.
Well, it has a lot to do with the national conversation going on with a certain person who's pushing this conversation. That we don't have to bring his name up. We all know what we're talking about. And it's turned this into kind of a little bit more of hate speech. But when you were talking about the immigrant thing, there was a business owner in Aberdeen, this is recently in the news, how he wanted to bring Puerto Rican immigrants to work in Aberdeen and to live there, and people were upset with him. And he says, number one, they're Americans, they're American citizens.
Yeah.
They don't have to get visas. They don't have to get work. They can move from Puerto Rico to Aberdeen, no paperwork, no nothing.
And they vote too.
And they can vote too.
Yeah.
And he said they are already American citizens. They don't have to. And he said, and the second thing is the unemployment rate is so high in Puerto Rico. What is it? 20? I'm trying to remember the last number I saw. 25.
The economy is
25 or
totally
30% unemployment rate.
Yes.
You know, and he's like, these people want to come here and work. They're American citizens.
Yeah.
We're not bringing illegals.
No.
We're bringing, why not have them come? And, it's like you said, the diversity and the conversation right now. And I hope, I hope Hillary becomes president, but I hope after the election, this all dies down a little bit.
It will fade.
I find, I'm not saying the police are all perfect, and I'm not saying the other side's all perfect, but there's a lot of chatter going on right now that isn't helping.
But like I say to make that point, South Dakota, Sioux Falls, that I know and I have been part of my home for 28 years, has been the one of welcoming, generosity, kind, safe. So this 1% that is trying to inflate fear in others by making up stories that we don't want refugees to come here. But what they're saying, they're talking about one group of refugees. You know what?
Yeah.
Those from Middle East.
Yeah.
That they don't want to say that exactly, because everyone who wears a hijab, anyone that who worships,
which is another proof that they don't know what the heck they're talking about, because there's refugees, there's immigrants from Africa that are Muslim, there's immigrants from Bosnia and Romania that are Muslim,
Chechnya.
So and you can't say, well, since they're Syrian, they must be Muslim. Well, they might be Christian.
Yes.
You don't know.
Exactly.
There's Christian Syrians. So it's just a bunch of chatter.
These are people who are running from fear being killed. That kid from Aleppo. Would you forget that photo of a boy that was so numb? He couldn't even tell where he was. That is something that I'll live with for the rest of my life. And those 2 dead boys who were fished from the seashore. We as human beings, as parents, grandparents, human beings who were given this opportunity to come here to make better our lives. Why are we going to allow fear to take over our humanity? We're giving the enemy power. And I keep saying our vetting process is good. How many people that came in the United States as refugees committed to terrorism? How many? None.
Right. Well, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I'm just looking forward to being in Pierre and just support education. Our kids deserve quality education, and so they can be competitive in the world. And healthcare, Medicaid expansion should be expanded. We're thinking about our brothers and sisters in Indian country. Once that is passed, and the other part who are not covered, just like me, you and I, who are not covered, we will benefit from that.
Right.
And it's not going to cost anybody or a penny or taxes. And I want transparency. One-party system has to end. We cannot, as a state like South Dakota, which is not even 1 million, having all these scandals going around. I don't feel good having to justify my state, the state I have called home. This is my home. This is where I have lived the longest. I have passion to make it work. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's why I'm so passionate about what is happening in Pierre, who goes to Pierre, and what they say and claim to represent. it's about time that District 6 has somebody who has a different perspective and tell it as it.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for visiting with us today, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Very soon.
I look forward to meeting with you in Pierre.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Thank you.
Y'all come back now. Cheers.
Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.